What is wrong with Guild Wars 2 PvP and how I would suggest fixing it? Okay, so who am I and why should I know anything about this topic? I have over 5,600 games of PvP played in Guild Wars 2. Some at launch back when the Capricorn map had underwater nodes, and many games in the last 5 years. You can see from my pie chart I have dabbled in all of the classes, but I've mostly played 3 with Ranger as my main. I really enjoy the game mode and I have a ton of time into it. I'm not the best player in the game. I've reached Platinum 2 a few times on my best of days, but I often sit around Gold 3 to Plat 1 in the seasons that I am active. What follows in this video is a list of problems as I see it in PvP and proposed solutions for those problems. I want to preface by saying I am not a game developer. I acknowledge that. I do not know what all is going on behind the scenes. Maybe there are reasons why some of these are dumb ideas, and I'm open to that possibility. Nonetheless, I think these are abundant enough that it is worth a conversation. Maybe it will only be that, a conversation. Or maybe shining a spotlight on the issue can help make something be done. Issue number 1. Matchmaking is poor. Very low-skilled players are sometimes thrown against very high-skilled players. This is made abundantly clear anytime you see one team absolutely dominate the other and win completely one-sidedly, or with dozens of kills compared to the other team's 0. Currently, as I understand it, if a high-ranked player queues up and they cannot find an opponent of their skill level in a decent amount of time, it will expand the search and eventually throw them against someone of a lower skill level if the queue goes on long enough. That person gets blendered and then they move on. Proposed solution. Don't do that. If there is no one for them to play against of their skill level, leave them in the queue until a proper opponent is found. The likely counter-argument for this is, Muck, are you suggesting leaving someone in the queue for tens of minutes, or possibly even hours, until others of their skill level are in the queue also? Yes. Yes, I am. I'm an old-school gamer. I remember in minigames when PvP happened from 6 p.m. to midnight server time, because that's when people were out of school and work. Any other times, the queues took an eternity. This isn't a new thing. I think waiting for proper opponents is completely worth it, especially if the alternative is them facing lower tier opponents, blendering them, and then probably never coming back to the game mode. Second issue. MMR feels like it never decays. Let's pause here and talk about what that is. MMR is matchmaking rating. It is where the game thinks your skill level is. If you let your rank decay from platinum down to silver, and then you come back to PvP and queue up, the system will still make an attempt to pit you against platinum opponents because your MMR is still that level, even if your current position on the leaderboard is not that level. I came back to PvP recently after 4 months of not playing a single game, and in my first match, I faced against people that were ranked in the top 25 on the leaderboard of North America. If there is a rating decay system, it is very poor. From looking at the wiki, it appears there is a decay system in place, but it needs to be more impactful than it currently is. Crank that dial up. The third issue is that MMR is account bound, not profession bound. This means if you have 1,000 games played as a firebrand and you decide you want to learn to play a Tempest for the very first time, you will immediately be thrown against the same people you've been fighting before. You will have 0 time to learn the new class because of this unless you make a new account to do so. Proposed solution. Have a separate MMR for each profession. Similar to Warcraft 3, if you queued as Orc or as Human, you had a separate MMR for each one, because the skills required to play these were different and this gave you time to learn them. The immediate issue with the solution is that currently in PvP, you can join a match, then after it has done the matchmaking, you can exit to character screen and change your character you are on. This is how you can end up in a match versus 5 Mesmers, or 5 of any other single class. This behavior would need to be stopped in order for this solution to work. On that same note, the system in the game will have a maximum of 2 of the same class each time during matchmaking. The system clearly cares about this, that it does not want to have 5 Mesmers on the same team. And yet, that same system allows you to character swap in the prep room, and then you end up with 5 Mesmers or whatever on the same team. This behavior should be stopped as it is clearly not intended. Counter argument, if the developers want us to be able to swap characters in the prep room after getting a look at our teammates, like this is Overwatch, then why are there restrictions on how many of the same class you can queue up with in the first place? Next issue. What if you join a game and someone is not moving at all or goes AFK soon after the start? Proposed solutions. 1, I don't think a surrender button is the answer. I see that suggested a lot, and that would encourage a League of Legends-esque behavior, which is, right after you lose the first fight, people say surrender at the 15-minute marker. It's a common thing there, and we don't want the equivalent of that. Next idea is drop in. Have a player in the queue drop into the game that's already in progress, taking the place of the missing person. They would not gain or lose any rating, because if, they drop in and the game's almost over, you don't want them held accountable for the loss or to, farm a win. But they can earn other rewards for saving that game. Prompt them before dropping in, asking if they are okay with it. This game is currently active. Would you like to drop in? If they hit no, then they remain in the queue, like normal. If they hit yes, they can earn those bonus rewards and get into gameplay faster. Remake idea. If one player hasn't contributed anything, that's damage, healing, or capping points in the first 3 minutes, maybe you could prompt their 4 teammates if they would like to remake. If it is unanimous, then a remake happens and the person who did not contribute is the only one to receive a loss. Replace the one person who's missing and jump right back into a game. Low priority queue idea. You could make people who earn the deserter debuff be required to win some games in a low priority queue before being allowed back into ranked games. This idea is a combination of what they do in Heroes of the Storm and Dota 2. The next problem I have not seen much of myself, but I see it occasionally from other players, is people going into PvP just to do guild dailies. They don't care about winning, they're just there for participation points. And this can make the gameplay worse for the other people in the game. Proposed solution. Have another tier of gameplay below unranked called practice matches that works for guild missions, or for people that are too scared to go into unranked. To get their guild missions done out of those? Still very much at the drawing board for this idea. Let me know what you think. Next problem. You can get stunned 14 times in a row, and there's not a lot you can do about it sometimes, especially if there's multiple opponents. Proposed solution. What if we added diminishing returns on CC? That is crowd control. For anyone who doesn't know, crowd control is any skill that takes away your ability to play the game. Fear, knockdown, knockback, stun, etc. In World of Warcraft, if you're hit with a 10-second stun, it would last for 10 seconds. And then if you're hit with another one, it lasts for 5 seconds. And if you're hit with a third 10-second stun, it lasts for 2.5 seconds. Then you're immune to stun for a period of time, so you can guaranteed play the game if you're not dead. Now, an obvious difference between Guild Wars 2 and WoW is we have stability and more stun breaks. However, it is not enough sometimes, especially if you're fighting against a spellbreaker or multiple enemies with lots of CC. Proposed solution number 2 is after getting hit with 3 CC in a very short period, perhaps the player could get a defiance bar for a few seconds, such as the Mechanist mechs do in PvP. The obvious counter argument for this is that Guild Wars 2 has stun breaks and stability, so the developers may not want this in the game at all. Next issue is players getting taken from 100% health to 0 in 1 to 2 seconds. PvP has become as glass cannon as a first-person shooter in the last few seasons. Proposed solution. Many stat amulets were removed from PvP at various times in the past, such as celestial stats being removed when renegades were running around unkillable with them and dominating the place. Perhaps bring some of these back if we aren't going to nerf the builds that are deleting people. Power creep has been extremely real in the last few years and has made some builds downright terrifying. This, in my opinion, has made the middle tiers of the PvP ladder far more fun than the higher ones where everyone is playing like that. And that's it. That pretty much sums up all my thoughts on this topic. I want to once again stress that I'm making this video out of my love for the PvP game mode in Guild Wars 2, and I want to see it succeed even more than it is now. The combat and fluid movement of Guild Wars 2 Conquest is incredibly fun, and I absolutely love it. It is simply that these issues drag it down, and the matchmaking most of all is what frustrates people and makes them try it once and never want to come back again, stagnating the growth of the game mode. It's hard to try and learn the systems when you get instantly killed every time you walk in. With that said, what are your thoughts? Do you think I have any good points here, or am I absolutely insane for suggesting changes like this? Let me know in the comments section down below, and let's see how the community feels. And as always, I'll fight you there.